Faith is a victory. Faith is a victory. Oh, glorious victory that overcomes the world. His banner over us, our sword, the word of God. We tread through the saints of God with shouts of pride and pride. By faith they light a will and breath with God for every field. By faith, by mercy, confident is still time to heal. Faith is the victory. Faith is the victory. Oh, glorious victory that overcomes the world. To him that overcomes the world, my dream shall begin. Before the end of each round, his name confessed in heaven. They hunger from the hills of light, our hearts in love of flame. We ring with all the hosts of night in Jesus' fountain name. Faith is a victory. Faith is a victory. Oh, glorious victory that overcomes the world. Please be seated.
Good morning. We're reading from Isaiah chapter 55, verses 1 through 13. Come, all who are thirsty, come to the waters. You who have no money, come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money, without cost. Why spend money on what is not bread, and labor on what does not satisfy? Listen to me, and eat what is good, and you will delight in the riches of the faith. Give ear and come to me. Listen that you may live. I will make an everlasting covenant with you. My faithful love promised David. See, I have made him a witness to the peoples, a ruler and a commander of the peoples. Surely I will summon nations you know not, and nations that do not know will come running to you because of the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, for he has endowed you with splendor. Seek the Lord while he may be found, call on him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake their ways, and the unrighteous their thoughts. Let them turn to the Lord, and he will have mercy on them, and to your God, and he will freely pardon. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, says the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. As the rain and snow come down from heaven, and do not return to me without watering the earth and making it bud and flourish, so that it yields seed for the sower and bread for the eater. So is my word that comes out of my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which I sent it. He will go out in joy and be led forth in peace. The mountains and hills will burst into song before you, and the trees of the field will clap their hands. Instead of the thorn bush will grow the juniper, and instead of briars, the myrtle. This will be the Lord's renown, for an everlasting sign that will endure forever. Would you bow with me? Heavenly Father, we humbly come to you this prayer and offer up this prayer of thanksgiving. We thank you for this opportunity that we have to come here to worship you, to sing praises to you, to hear portions of your word. Help us to apply these things to our lives that we can be better examples for your cause. We thank you for the earth that we live in, the beauty that surrounds us, the changing of the seasons. We know that all this takes place in your will and your desire. We ask you to open our hearts and our minds to the messages that will be brought today, that we can glean from that something that we can go out and we can cast into the world, that they flourish and grow, that we can be a shining example for you, for your Son, his cause on this earth. And most of all, we thank you for your Son and his willingness to come to this earth, to live that perfect life, and to lay down his life for our transgressions. It's in his name we pray, Jesus Christ.
How firm a foundation in waves of glory is laid for your faith. It is excellent. What more can he say than to you he has said? You will find his peace for refuge and fled. Fear not, I am with thee, for me not dismayed. I am your God, and will still give thee aid. I am strengthened thee now, and for Jesus now. The soul that conceals and me for repose, I will not desert to repose. The soul of hell should never stay. I'll never forsake.
If you'd like to follow along, I'll be reading Luke 18, verse 14. I'm sure that these are fairly known verses to most people, but follow along if you would. Then Jesus told his disciples a parable to show them that they should always pray and not give up. He said, in a certain town there was a judge who neither feared God nor cared what people thought. And there was a widow in that town who kept coming to him with a plea, grant me justice against my adversary. For some time he refused, but finally he said to himself, even though I don't fear God or care what people think, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will see that she gets justice, so that she won't eventually come and attack me. And the Lord said, listen to what the unjust judge says. And will not God bring about justice for his chosen ones who cry out to him day and night? Will he keep putting them off? I tell you, he will see that you get justice and quickly. However, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth? To those who were confident of their own righteousness, look down on everyone else, Jesus told this parable. Two men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed, God, I thank you that I am not like the other people, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week and give a tenth of all I get. But the tax collector stood at a distance. He would not even look up to heaven, but beat his breast and said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. I tell you that this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Will you bow with me at this time? We're going to have a prayer, and I'll leave time in for each and every one of us to go to the Lord and for forgiveness, and whatever they would like to say to the Lord at this time. So will you bow with me at this time? Our Lord and Heavenly Father, we're so thankful that we have scriptures like this, that you have protected this Bible for us, that we can continually get your advice, read the parables, understand the stories, that we can see that we need to be humble every day of our lives, that we need to continuously focus on you, not on ourselves. And we pray that as each and every one in this congregation today comes to you, that we know that you'll listen, we know that you'll act, we know that you will not be like the leader that put off because they didn't fear you, but feared some of the people. We just thank you for being here to listen to our prayers at this time. Thank you, dear Lord, for this time. Thank you for each and every one that's our prayers to you. We thank you for being that patient, everlasting listener. We know that listening is probably not one of the strengths of us as humans, but we know that it is of you. Continue to be with each and every one. Walk with Christians throughout this world. Help each and every one to be that shining light, to help shed your light and spread the word of you and all the things that you have done. We thank you for being our Lord and Savior, dear Jesus, and it's in your name that we pray. Amen.
How you did walk the hand the light and the bread, and the sun of fear, how you did walk the field that walk, the long journey long, and the hill till from far from you did walk. How you did walk. How you did walk. It's a mighty how you did walk the great and bright, ways for the good, with his light in her eyes. How you did walk the path of thy spirit, the fruit of your life, so that others may live. How you did walk. How you did walk. How you did walk in the mighty and as he lay down his life, we offer his sacrifice, that we might live, just as he died, willing to pay the price, willing to pay the price. How you did all the night, sons of good news, and the love of the King. How you did all the hand that stood, the wine and the bread, and the sons of the earth. How you did all. How you did all. How you did all in the mighty
Sometimes I wonder if we don't do our kids an injustice when we focus our Bible stories on the big stuff. You know, and maybe give them the impression that unless I'm doing the big stuff, then I'm not of any use to God. We tell the story of Noah. I mean, the guy spends 100 years building this big boat and saves all of mankind. We talk about Joseph. You know, his brothers sell him into slavery. He gets in prison and ends up being the second most powerful man in the world. We talk about Moses. There's a big one. You know, the guy born into slavery, Liz's life in the palace. We got the burning bush issue. We got the 10 plagues. We then got him leading millions of people. We've got the Red Sea. We've got Mount Sinai and the 10 Commandments. Man, how do you do better than that? We got David. Kills Goliath. Turns the tide of a battle and actually the war that's been going on for years. And they win. He gets to marry the king's daughter. He becomes king himself. Paul goes off and becomes a missionary, writes all these letters of encouragement to all these churches that end up being collected and now takes up most of our New Testament. How do you get better than this stuff? Sometimes I wonder if we don't do them a disfavor. Because Jesus focused on the individual. Jesus focused on the little stuff that were, in his eyes, huge victories. You remember the first thing that came to my mind when I was thinking about this is the widow woman. Everybody's throwing in their money into the collection, and here comes this widow woman that has nothing more than what would be half a cent in our day, and gives it. And what did Jesus do? It's a victory. It's huge in his eyes. It's more about the heart than the big stuff. You remember the crazy guy that's running around in cemeteries naked, scaring people at night, and Jesus shows up and he, heals the man of whatever mental disease he has, and he wants to go with Jesus. I want to go with you. I want to follow you. I want to be there. I can be a living example, everybody, of things that you do. Who knows? Maybe I can be a Paul and write letters and Jesus says, "What? No. Go home. Go to your home." That's where the victory is. Go tell your family. Go tell your friends. Go tell the people you work with. The little stuff sometimes can make the biggest difference. Von Falk was a World War II pilot. Piloted a B-17. One of his missions over Nazi Germany caught a lot of flack, and he knew he had gotten hit in the gas tank, but it didn't explode. He made it back. After he landed, he told the ground crew, "When you find that shell, I want it." It was obviously a dud, but I'm here because it was a dud. He said, "Von, you better get over here." There wasn't one. There were 11 in his aircraft. All unexploded shells. Now the odds of one hitting you and not exploding, those odds are astronomical. But 11? No way. And the ground crew thought the same thing, so they started very carefully. They took one of them apart, and they found that it was void of explosive charge. There wasn't anything in it. Yeah, so they had to take the others apart. All 11. There was nothing in them. Except one of them. One of them had a little piece of rolled up paper in it that they found. They unrolled it. There was something in a Czechoslovakian language that they couldn't read. They had to find someone on base who could translate this thing for them. And it says, "This is all we can do for now." prisoners of war working in a Nazi munitions factory, putting these shells together without charge. Little thing. I can't fly a B-17, but here's a little something I can do. Little things. A lot. And you're asking, okay, so what does this have to do with anything? This should remind us every week. I mean, come on, we take this little piece of flat, leavenless bread, tasteless, and a little cup that's, well, you're going to get a little more juice this morning because Dave filled it. So I usually fill about half. Well, you're going to get a little more this morning. But you know what? It doesn't even qualify for a snack for little Ruby over there. And yet, what does it mean to you? The body and blood, the Son of God that was given for you. It should be a reminder to us every week. I don't have to be a great missionary. I don't have to be in the news. I don't have to turn heads. It's the little things. There's so much.
Let's go to our Father in prayer. Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this Lord's Day that you've given us and the opportunity we have to gather here this morning. Lord, as we continue our thoughts on your Son and the great gift that was given, Lord, we thank you for the example that you've given us and the willingness to come here and to live amongst us and to teach us and to show us what we need to do to be saved. By being a servant, by showing your love. Your Father, the love that you have is so great, so powerful. And we thank you so much for it, for loving us. Those who sin and fall short, that can't live without you. And dear Father, we know that you came here and suffered and bled and died on that cross for our sins. That you took our sins upon you as you hung there on that cross and died. Dear Father, we thank you for that death, burial, and that resurrection, that you've conquered death and are in heaven, reigning there. And dear Father, that you've been given all power and authority. Dear Father, we just thank you for that sacrifice. We thank you so much for that love and that grace and the mercy that you show us each and every day. And as we partake of this bread, dear Father, help us remember your Son, the great love that was shown, the great love that's given. And dear Father, the healing and the saving that comes from that blood and from that body that was given up on that cross for us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
continue in prayer. Father in heaven, I'm truly thankful for your love, willingness to give up your Son on that cross for our sins. Thankful for Jesus being willing to obey your commands. And we do ask. Thankful for this little thing, this ceremony to remember Jesus. So we can remember the big impact he has on this world. From this little thing. So thankful to be your children. Thankful that you cared enough about us to bring us home. In your Son. Ask you to be with us as we take this through the vine of the innocent blood that was shed for us. Though he was without sin, he gave his blood for us to purify us so we can come forward. In Jesus' name we pray.
When I got here this morning, I was still trying to think what I'm going to say for this time. There was a pile of mail that had accumulated over the week while I was gone, and got a letter from HC10. He must have been reading my mind when he wrote this. I'm going to read a part of this letter to you. Many years you've been reading about praying and contributing to the people of Ghana. You sacrifice time and money to serve thousands of people, many of them Christian brothers and sisters that you will not meet this side of eternity. Over 2 million people now have fresh, clean, contaminant-free water to drink because you care. You're a hero in my book, And I'm deeply grateful for your love of mankind. Same kind of love Jesus showed us when he fed the hungry, healed the sick, told us that a cup of cold water given to one who needed it would bless us as much as the one who received it. And it does that, doesn't it? Some of those, like you, who have helped over the years, have said to me, my contribution is so small, it won't really help either. And they apologize for not being able to give more. I always point to the feeding of the 5,000 to show how a small boy with a lunch of 5 loaves and 2 fish was able to feed 5,000 people. Every contribution is a help to a blessing for those who are desperately poor. One lady gave me $25 and told me it was nothing. I showed her a picture of some of the ladies in northern Ghana who could feed their whole family on less than $25 a month. One of these ladies told me that she was so thankful for the water well we drilled for her in her village. She said she used to have to rise very early, a couple of hours before the sun rose, and go with several other ladies to fetch water. She said she walked for more than 2 miles to get to the pond where they fetched from. The pond was full of muddy water. The cattle and sheep were always drinking from it. She said that the water smelled badly because the animals relieved themselves in the water. So the water that they drank from, but having no choice, she said, I filled my bucket, carried it home. My whole family drank it. We were often sick from the water. But now, our health is much better. Thank you. Thank you so much for giving us water. You've saved our lives. Again, it's not the big things. It's the little things that God uses to make big things in this world. Let's pray. Father, we're so thankful that it is you that's in control, that all you desire of us is to please you, to trust you, to know that because your hand is working in this world so mightily that it's not us, it's you. We pray that you will help us to remember this week these little things, this crackle, this juice, little things, and yet it meant so much to us. Help us, Father, in our own little worlds, to share that with somebody else, so that they too can feel the joy of something so small, and yet means so much. We pray all of this in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. If you're visiting with us, we use this opportunity to help with our kids and teaching them. Little things do mean a lot. They collect money. You'll hear the chain bouncing in this thing, or the dollar bills. And yet they use this money to help in our community. Family up behind us that had a fire in their house. Some of the children helping children funds that provided clothes for the little kids, so they go to school with some clean clothes. They help the Ghana Village of Hope. Just change, yet they do so much. We have a prayer, and then they know the prayer. Father, we are so thankful for our children. We're thankful for the things they teach us. We pray that you will help us in the things we teach them. In it all, Father, may we bring glory to your name. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen. Jesus loves us. Anybody know that song? Jesus
loves me, yes, I know. For the Bible tells me so. Little ones in him belong. They are weak, but he is strong. Yes, Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me. The Bible tells me so. Those kids are cute as sliced bread, you know? I know I just like this. And the day out, let's stand and sing together before I just pray for the word of God. Humble yourself in the sight of the Lord. Humble yourself in the sight of the Lord. And He will lift you up. And He will lift you up. Jesus is the Son of God. Jesus is the Son of God. And He died. He died. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. Saving a wretch like me. That saved a wretch like me. When we've been there 10,000 years. We've been there 10,000 years. Christ died and the sun. Christ died humble yourself in the sight of the Lord. Humble yourself in the sight of the Lord. And He will lift you up. And He will lift you Hello, good morning. Is this working? My phone's number 3 today, so it might be different for the TJ. I'll just keep pretend to talk. Hello, hello, there we go. Maybe? Yes. All right. Good morning, hello. Have you ever thought about the last prayer? The last prayer that will ever be said on earth prior to the return of Christ. What would that be? Maybe it will be in that moment when Jesus comes and it will be uttered then as people are seeing Jesus. But what about your last prayer? My last prayer? That's the one that I'm more interested in this morning. Not necessarily the last prayer, but the last prayer in my life or your life. What will it be? Maybe you've been there to hear someone else's last prayer. Maybe you haven't. But I think it's an intriguing thing to think about. What will my last prayer be? Maybe for some of us it will be said in the moment of our death. Maybe we'll realize what's happening. We'll have the presence of mind and opportunity to pray in that very moment, recognizing this is the last breath that I'm taking. Maybe it will be said
the night before, not knowing what would happen to us in the night or the next day, next morning. Maybe it will be said weeks, months, maybe even years before our death. Maybe my last prayer will be one that says, God, I don't know if I can make it anymore. I don't know if you're ever going to come through for me. I don't know if I can see you rewarding me at any point for this life of sacrifice and suffering that I've given up for you, Lord. I don't see how or when you're ever going to vindicate me for this life that I've given to you. Maybe it's a prayer of giving up. There's a lot of different last prayers available to us. That's part of the point that Luke is trying to drive home in these parables. In Luke chapter 18, it is the question, whom does God vindicate? Is he faithful? Is he just? Doyle's right, these are familiar texts to us, ones that we've been through here on Sunday morning before. But I want to approach it this morning from this perspective of the last prayer. First text, and I don't know if this stands out to you in your text, but there is a theme that's obvious, even linguistically here in the text, and at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 times this Greek word for righteousness or justice appears in the text. It's very clear that the theme of this little chunk, this little section, has to do with justice or righteousness. It has to do with justification. Whom does God justify, vindicate in the end? Whom does he reward? And also the question of God's justice or his righteousness. Is he faithful? And to whom is he faithful? So you see that theme that just stands out to you in the text, even just by scanning down the first 14 verses of the text here. And that comes out a little bit in our English translation as well. But it begins, Luke explains, he's putting these two parables together for a reason. He explains the first one in chapter 18, verse 1. He's telling them a parable to show that at all times they ought to pray and not lose heart. And so there was a judge in a certain city, and who is this judge? You can't be farther or more antithetical to the character of God, as we know from Scripture, than this judge, In a certain city, there was a judge who did not fear God, who did not respect man. All right, so not a God-fearer, not someone who respects people, and we come to find out not really a good judge either. But there's a lesson to be learned here. There's a widow in that city, someone who's poor, someone who's oppressed, someone who's marginalized, someone in need of justice. She kept coming to the judge saying, I need legal protection given to me from my opponent. She doesn't have any way to do that other than through the hands of the just judge, hopefully a just one. But in verse 4, we find out that the judge was unwilling to do this. He didn't want to have anything to do with it. He is, in fact, unjust. There is no justice to this judge's character. And so he's unwilling in verse 4, and afterward he said to himself, you know what, even though I don't care about any of this stuff, even though I don't fear God or respect men, this widow, in her cry, her plea for justice, is becoming very tedious, very annoying. It's grating on me. And so, because she bothers me, in verse 5, I'm going to give her this justice she asked for, this legal protection. Otherwise, by continually coming to me, she will wear me out.
verse 2, she will wear me out, verse 5. Literally, give me a backpack in the Greek text. And so, the Lord says in verse 6, hear what the unrighteous judge said. And will not God bring about justice for his elect who cry to him day and night? And will he delay long over them? I tell you, he will bring about justice for them, and quickly. So, even in the worst case scenario, the worst sort of judge possible, this woman who consistently cries out, perseveres, is faithful in her prayer, her plea to this judge, ultimately gets justice from the worst possible source of justice that exists. And so Jesus' parable says, if that's true of the worst possible justice, how much more is God going to hear and answer the cries of his people crying out for vindication, for justice in the end? So it's absurd to think that even if an unjust judge eventually gives that God, the most just judge, wouldn't do the same. However, verse 8, however, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth? And so it's the question of the last prayer. However, God is going to vindicate. He's ready to justify. He's ready to give justice in the end. But is there going to be anyone around in the end who is still waiting and anticipating and hoping to receive it? When Jesus comes to judge, to bring justice, to vindicate, to give the ultimate blessing, will there be any faith that he finds on earth at the time, in the hour of justice, when it finally comes? Will it be there? Is this not the lesson that we hear for God's people over and over throughout the text? We just spent a lot of time in the book of Daniel and the class downstairs. This is the message of Daniel, right? That final blessing that we read about in the end of Daniel chapter 12. It's given to the righteous ones who are faithful and wise, who persevere, who continue to utter and to trust, to utter those faithful prayers, those prayers of hope for a God who has promised on oath, I will vindicate, I will save, I will justify, I will make all things right in the end. And so Jesus, in this parable, is asking, what will be your last prayer? Will you be one of the ones whose last prayer is one of faith? Whose last prayer is one of hope? Whose last prayer is one of hanging in there, even when it seems like God delays, even when it seems like you've been at the end of your rope for long enough. You don't know if it's worth praying anymore. You don't know if God is faithful anymore. You don't know if he's going to come through anymore. Jesus is saying the day is coming. That's the message of the whole Bible. The day is coming. And when it comes, will the Son of Man find faith on earth? The oath is guaranteed. The promise is guaranteed. But what Jesus is saying is that the one who is justified in the end, the one who finds that vindication, is the one who sticks it out, who perseveres, who continues to walk in the Spirit. So who is the one vindicated? It's the one who perseveres. It's the one who patiently endures and trusting in God, that he does hear, that he does listen, that he does vindicate. And then, turning the point over, Luke follows us up with a second parable, also about righteousness, also asking the question, whom does God justify? So he tells a parable about to some people who were trusting in themselves that they were righteous, and who looked on others with contempt. So it's an obvious message. This is about people who look at themselves with adulation and praise, and also are focused on others with contempt. So the parable, the two men went up to the temple to pray. One is a Pharisee, one is a tax collector. One is respected in the community, one is, looked down upon with contempt in the community. One is the faithful, pious student of the law. The other is basically a traitor to the Jews who is kind of on the side of the Romans, collecting taxes from the Jews on behalf of the Romans, willing to do whatever it takes to save their neck, not an ounce of courage or faithfulness in God. Well, these two people end up sitting right next to each other in the temple when they're praying. The Pharisee standing in verse 11, the Pharisee stood and was praying to him. Oh, did your Bible say that? The Pharisee stood and was praying this to himself. That's a funny phrase, isn't it? Okay. Not necessarily to God, but to himself. He is thanking God. Yes, he's speaking to God, but he's really, in a way, praying to himself. Thanking God for himself. Not asking God, not praising God, but thanking God and praising himself. God, I thank you. What's the first prayer? What's the priority? God, I thank you that I'm not like other people. Sinners. People who are sinful. The swindlers, the unjust, the adulterers. Or even like this tax collector that I couldn't help noticing, even though I'm here to pray to God, I can't help but notice this inferior prayer next to me, the tax collector, who definitely, by the way, needs the mercy of the Lord. Thank God that I can just come here and utter prayers that are, beyond prayers for mercy, because I'm not in need of that anymore. But Lord, please, if you need to focus on only one of us, focus over there, because we all know he needs your mercy. Why? Because I fast twice a week. Verse 12, common Jewish practice of the pious Jews, Mondays and Thursdays. That, by the way, is why the Christians ended up choosing fast days on Wednesdays and Fridays, to not be like the hypocrites, as it says in some early Christian texts. So they weren't best friends. The Christians even chose different fast days than the Jews. But anyway, he fasts twice a day. I pay tithes of all I get. He fasts, he tithes. But then the tax collector. And we switch to see what he is doing. Standing some different distance away, was even unwilling to lift up his eyes to heaven, but was beating his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. And of course, we know that Jesus says, I tell you this man, the second one, went up to his house justified rather than the other. Because everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and the one who humbles himself will be exalted. Total shock to the listeners. Who would have guessed that a tax collector would be justified rather than a Pharisee, that a tax collector would be counted righteous rather than the Pharisee? But the difference is in the prayer, the attitude, and that's what Jesus is trying to say. Whom does God justify? The one who perseveres and the one who is humble. The poem I want to share, it's called The Last Prayer. It's a simple poem, just rhyming couplets all the way down. But it's an interesting concept that is based on this second parable here, with echoes of Isaiah 55, the other text we read today. And it's an honest poem about uttering one's last prayer. And it's not the prayer of faithfulness. It's the prayer of the Pharisee. And it goes like this. Should you come, O faithful day, when all I ask and all I pray is done according to my will, my words like rain on Zion's hill. One final prayer I then would make, not for Yahweh, but for my sake. For on that day my exalted base shall have no need for heaven's grace. The mighty acts no longer rehearse, our cosmic roles thus reverse. I as Lord, Yahweh as slave, I'd go to my temple myself to save. Entering the gates, my presence I'd seek. I tithe my strength twice fast each week. And on that day, the thorn at my side, with humbled crown and lowly eye, will lift his voice to an unknown God, stealing my glory and giving him none. A cry for mercy wells up in that thorn, a juniper thus risen amidst my scorn. His hands so bloodied from beating his breast, and mine so clean in their counterfeit dress. I like this poem because it's saying that this is essentially the last prayer prayed by this man. Not because it's the last time he would ever go into the temple and say words, but essentially this is the last ounce of humility has left him, and his prayers have transformed from this point on. No longer prayed from a state of humility in praise and exaltation of the God of mercy, but now prayers that are essentially to self, as the text says. So it was the last prayer to God, and in a sense, the first prayer to self. And that's why the poem says that he lifts his voice to an unknown God. He no longer knows this God to whom he's addressing his voice. But the new God is the God of self. And that too is an option for Christians because of pride. We can deceive ourselves into thinking we live a lifetime of prayer, when in fact the last prayer we ever said to God was long ago, because pride can take over our hearts, and religion, the practice of Christian faith, can be about judging others, can be about comparing self to others, as the Pharisee does. Prayers can be a source of pride, can become that easily, where all we're doing is congratulating the self, like this man in the temple is doing. And when a Christian gets to that point, we've already said our last prayer long ago, last authentic prayer to God. Now these are prayers of self-congratulation, self-adulation. These are prayers of comparison, prayers of contempt. And Jesus says there's no place for that. The one who is justified and vindicated in the end is not the proud, but the humble. This man, he says, went to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled. He who humbles himself will be exalted. May our last prayer be one of faithfulness and perseverance. May our last prayer be one of humility before God. Let's stand and sing.
I fear not to borrow what tomorrow may bring, its shadow or sunshine or rain. The Lord I know, the Lord I really think, in all of my burden lay. Living by faith, in Jesus alone, trusting in God, in His love. Brother, say, suffer God, living by faith, and real the tempest may blow and the storm comes around, the spirit of life is aside. I'm never alone with the overcast sky, the master of sun and sky. Living by faith, in Jesus alone, resting in God, in His love. Brother, say, suffer God, living by faith, and feel our Lord will return to live each day. Our troubles will then be more. The Master will stand, He will lead us away. He's on the path of shore. Living by faith, in Jesus alone. Trusting in God, in His love. Brother, say, suffering God, and living by faith, and feel Be seated.
Thank you, Justin. We do not have any additional prayer requests coming this morning.